Choose any ATM of your convenience and stand a chance to win gold sovereigns. Lanka Pay.
On the 17th of November, an IMF delegation headed by Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Peter Brewer, arrived in Sri Lanka to conduct the third review under the Extended Fund Facility Programme approved for the island nation on the 20th of March last year. During their visit, the delegation held discussions with top officials including President Anura Dissanayake, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe and Deputy Minister of Economic Development Professor Anil Jayantha Fernando. Issuing a statement at the conclusion of their visit, the IMF announced that the delegation and the Sri Lankan authorities reached a staff-level agreement on economic policies, concluding the third review under the Extended Fund Facility Programme. Addressing a media briefing today to announce the review's successful conclusion, the visiting IMF delegation briefed the public on the key outcomes of their engagements with the government.
Completion of the review by the IMF Executive Board requires the implementation by the authorities of prior actions, including the submission of a 2025 budget consistent with program objectives, and it also requires confirming that the program remains adequately financed. Upon completion of the Executive Board review, Sri Lanka would have access to about $330 million. This would bring IMF financial support disbursed under the arrangement to a total of about $1.3 billion. I would like to point out that program performance has been strong. All quantitative performance criteria and indicative targets for end June 2024 were met, except for the target on social spending. And similarly, the targets for end September 2024 were met, except for the one on social spending. Most structural benchmarks due before October were either met or implemented with delay. Some benchmarks are delayed because of the election cycle. I would like to note that the new government's commitment to the program objectives has enhanced confidence and ensures policy continuity. Sustaining the reform momentum is critical to safeguarding the hard-won gains of the program. It is also critical to put the economy on a path towards lasting recovery and stable and inclusive growth. Regarding the debt restructuring process, Sri Lanka's recent agreement in principle with bondholders is an important milestone. It puts Sri Lanka's debt on a path towards sustainability. The critical next steps are to complete the commercial debt restructuring, finalize bilateral agreements with official creditors along the lines of the accord with the Official Creditor Committee, and implement the terms of the other agreements. This will help restore Sri Lanka's debt sustainability. The new government's mandate will reinvigorate governance reforms addressing corruption risks, rebuilding economic confidence, and making growth more robust and inclusive.
From the completion of the third review to approval of the fourth disbursement, what are the conditions on Sri Lankan part to complete?
There are some prior actions, and those relate mostly to the budget. We will be interested in convincing ourselves that this budget is in line with the program objectives, so we'll be having a very close discussion with the authorities on that. The authorities have committed to stay within the guardrails of the program, meaning important guardrails are the primary surplus, the revenue, and also the quality of the fiscal measures. And within those guardrails, we have agreed on a package that allows them to achieve their priorities and objectives. And that will eventually be documented in the budget that the government is preparing. And as soon as that is submitted to Parliament, it will then be possible to go ahead with the process for the fourth review.
The previous government said that vehicle import restrictions will be lifted by February 2025. If the current government goes ahead with it, does the IMF recommendations comply with it?
That is a decision by the government that has implications with respect to monetary policy. Yes, that is a part that we have discussed. In fact, we have already discussed in the previous review. Lifting these restrictions will be a very important source of revenue for the government in the year ahead. It's one of the more and more rare opportunities to raise revenue in Sri Lanka. So it'll be an important part of that. Of course, it needs to be managed carefully with respect to reserves of the country.
One of the criticisms that came up during the negotiations about the IMF and once a bailout was announced was that some of the reforms unfairly sort of target the poorer segments of society, and the more richer brackets of Sri Lanka's population were left relatively unscathed. Was this something that was raised in negotiations that you had with the government?
You said the program was targeting the poor. I would respectfully disagree with that. It's targeting the poor to help them out. This crisis is extremely costly for the population, for everybody in Sri Lanka. There's no doubt about that. It affects the poor the most because they don't really have the buffers to deal with the cost. And also, it's important to remember that this hardship, it doesn't come from being imposed by the IMF. It's the result of the crisis that has taken place. The IMF is here to help with that, to help have a program that allows bringing the economy back on track so as to help everybody in the country.
Given the strong mandate from the people, including the middle class who voted the previous government out, is government sort of rethinking its own strategy or stance on Sri Lanka's way forward? Or you're firm and you won't show any flexibility going forward?
The challenges for Sri Lanka are the same. Sri Lanka has to think about how to address these, how to ensure a full recovery from the crisis and have stable and inclusive growth. So the main guardrails of the program are designed in such a way to facilitate that. Within those guardrails, a review is an opportunity to take stock of developments and to look at are any adjustments to the program necessary. We have done that at the first review and we have done that at the second review, and that happens at every IMF review of IMF programs. So we do discuss with the authorities their preferences for how they want to adjust the program, and we have managed to reach staff level agreement on the basis of a way forward that stays within the guardrails of the program, but at the same time allows the authorities an opportunity to make amendments in line with their priorities, and they will put these in their budget proposals at the appropriate time.